What's your wildest story that sounds too far-fetched to be true? In 1987 my dad and his buddies were at a bar in the small town of Fermont, Quebec town way up north in Canada. For whatever reason they each signed their names on the $10 bills they had, joking that it'd be funny if one day they got the bill back as change somewhere else. Fast forward to 1992, my mom and dad moved to Vancouver during some rough economic times where he got laid off from his job. He ended up doing trade school and got a job as a mechanic for a little while before getting his old job back and moving back to his hometown. Vancouver is on the exact opposite side of Canada, about 5,500 km away from Fermont. They end up going to dinner one night and he gets $10 back as change. He turns the bill around and there's his signature. I was surfing in Santa Barbara County when I was a kid, maybe 14 or 15. When I would come in from a surf, I had the habit of undoing my leash from my leg while I was walking in the shallow water. Unbeknownst to me, the other side of the leash that connects to the board had come off. I lost my leash. I searched around the tidal zone but no luck. I was bummed, but I just moved on. 3 weeks later, I was surfing in Ventura County, and as I was walking in from the surf, a piece of kelp wrapped around my leg. I reached down to pull it off. It wasn't kelp, it was my leash I'd lost a dozen miles north a few weeks back. It had algae and stuff growing on it, but no mistaking it was absolutely my leash. When I was in college there was one time my girlfriend, now wife, who was living with me at the time, was smoking weed in the main room while I was watching TV in the bedroom. I didn't smoke anymore, but I didn't care. Anyway, it was a little late, probably like 10, and I guess I had the TV too loud because the neighbors started pounding on the wall. Well, I turned it down low, but about 15 to 20 minutes later someone knocked at the door and my GF rushes in and says, "The cops are outside." Now I'm not stoned and no one really wants to deal with the cops, but I wasn't really worried. So I answer the door and I generally have a really laid back attitude, so I was pretty nonchalant I guess. I said something like, "Oh, hello. Can I help you?" And they said they received a noise complaint. I said something like, "Oh yeah. I guess I had the TV on a little loud." I turned it down. And that was basically it. Anyway, I went back to my room and my GF continued hanging out in the front room. Later she told me she overheard the cops making fun of me thinking I was stoned, mimicking me in a stoner voice. I was stone cold sober. Mine is when I was in high school I lived out in the countryside of central Texas. I was just kind of bumbling around on the property and my mum's little chihuahua was tagging along. I heard a bird, saw a fast moving shadow, and threw my arm out, slapping a hawk out of the sky as it tried to get my mom's chihuahua. Cut my arm pretty good, but saved that little rat of a dog. The chihuahua went on to pass away at a smooth 19 years old. I'm an American from the Midwest. I decided to go to Iceland when it was all the rage a few years back. Found myself several miles off-road on a glacier. Decided it was as good a spot as any for lunch. Sit down on a rock and start eating a sandwich. Tia hikers comes up the trail. We say hi. They sound American too. Ask where they're from. They tell me, "Oh that's cool. My sister lives there. She works at business." The female hiker gives me a funny look. "Is your sister so and so?" "Yeah. You know her? She's my roommate." Was in Vegas for a work thing. I was not happy about being there because it was a tough time in my life. Money was really tight and Vegas is the last place you want to be when money is tight. I was telling my buddy about it and he says, "I'm going to PayPal you $150. Go play the poker tournament at the Venetian at night. You can drink for free and hopefully you last long. If you win anything, pay me back. If not, no worries." So I did. Won the tournament. $3,200. The second night, I went off to play some craps alone one night because I did not like the work people and did not want to hang with them. Started with $200. 45 minutes later I 7'd out and had $37,000. Cashed out and told no one. On the drive back, I lived in Phoenix. I called my buddy and told him only about it. I sent him $2,500. I worked in TV news as a videographer, and I was at a wildlife refuge in South Florida. At one point, I walked up to a fence and was shooting video of some ostriches. They walked over to me and stood very close as they seemed very curious about me. I was getting some great close-up shots as one ostrich was lightly pecking at my camera. Then, he reached over, snatched my mix foam windscreen, pulled his head back, and held it in his beak like a cigar. A second later, he gulped it down and stood there, looking at me fat, dumb, and happy. I went back to the station and had to explain what happened so I could get a new foam windscreen. When they called bullshit, I put the tape in the player and showed them the proof. A minute later, I had my new windscreen. The second, third, and fourth date I went on with my wife had super huge coincidences on them that, if I'd planned them, would either make me an enormous stalker or a master at planning. Date 2, I take her to a sushi bar where I happen to know the owners. What I didn't know was that his daughter was going to show up that night towards the end of the dinner with a box of puppies. Since we were the only ones left in the restaurant, they asked if we wanted to play with them. My wife melted on the spot and instantly said best date ever. Spent half an hour playing with puppies. Date 3, took her to an aquarium that neither of us had ever been to before. What I'd found out the first date was that she was a huge fan of Beauty and the Beast, and out of nowhere about halfway through the aquarium was a Disney exhibit with half the cast of The Little Mermaid, and for no reason Belle, who said my friend Ariel invited me along. My wife was even wearing her brand new Belle themed backpack. The picture I have of the two of them together is one I'll cherish forever. Date 4 happened to fall on Valentine's. I hadn't planned on getting her anything that nice because honestly it was still a pretty new relationship, but the day before she told me that a necklace she'd been waiting for had just arrived, and it was the music box key necklace from the movie Anastasia. Here's where it gets weird. I already had the music box that key went to. I'd bought it for a previous relationship that didn't work out, and I'd never gotten the chance to give it that person. Took me all of 15 minutes to find it in my storage, and it was still new in box. Surprised my wife with it at dinner, and she was in literal tears. She was so happy. She said before years later that this was the moment she knew she'd marry me if I ever asked. Granted, I've never been able to top those dates, but I always try, lol. I went river tubing down a 4-kilometer stretch of glacial river in rural British Columbia. Somewhere over that 4 kilometer, I lost my cell phone. I don't love having a cell phone, so I was putting off replacing it. After 9 days of no cell phone, my husband gently indicated it was time for me to go get a new one. I jokingly told him, I don't need to. I have a really good feeling it's going to come back to me. 20 minutes later, the Find My iPhone notification appeared on his cell phone, and we got a call saying that a lady's son found my phone after he had fallen out of his tube and stepped directly on my phone. After realizing it didn't feel like a river rock, he reached down and picked my phone up. It was in a life-proof case. They took it home and charged it, and now I'm writing this story on said phone. I used to be a nanny. We would go to a local river on hot days. Well, once the 4-year-old lost her pink Crocs sandal, and my god, was she devastated. Why? Aside from Crocs being the pinnacle of 4-year-old summer fashion, she had put a very cool blue-eye charm on it. We searched for the shoe for the better half of an hour with no luck, and so we left. We went to get ice cream to soothe the harsh sting of grief, and forgot about it until about 2 weeks later. We were at a different park upstream from Lost Croc River, and the oldest pointed out some trash caught in some branches at the edge of the river. Being kids, they went to poke at it, and what did they find? The goddamn pink croc. Blue-eye charm and all. How the hell it got 3 miles upstream, I have no clue. We figured an animal or something, but that was one of the weirdest things to this day. A serious rivalry developed between my bearded dragon and the cat. The dragon trolls the cat and the cat butts in any time the dragon is getting affection. The one day I had the dragon on my lap, sat on the sofa, so the cat started yowling and pacing in front of me. The dragon turns to the edge and takes a running leap, landing on the cat. The cat bolts a couple of laps around the living room floor with the dragon somehow holding on. I avoid telling that story because I don't think anyone would ever believe me. An old girlfriend and I went on a hot air balloon ride at a balloon festival about 20 years ago. The way this works is you go up in the balloon, the wind carries you away, someone drives a chase car, usually a van of some sort, to fetch you when the balloon comes down. We came down in this beautiful manicured field that happened to be part of a national lab where Manhattan Project work and early research in radioisotopes was conducted. The field was contaminated, and we had to go through the facility's decon procedures, which involved stripping naked and bathing with special cleansers and going through a whole body detector. Not me, but my wife's aunt. She was out walking her dog with a friend at Lakeside Park a few weeks ago. This is the very same Lakeside Park that is featured in the Rush song of the same name. It was a hot Saturday, and the dogs were starting to get thirsty, but had already consumed the water that they had brought with them. That was when she saw a group having a picnic, complete with barbecue, beer, wine, and water. She approached the group, asking if she could give her dog a drink. The woman who she was speaking with got the dogs some water, while wife's aunt talked to some of the group. It turns out that it was Jethro Tull, taking a break from their touring schedule. They had just played a show the night before and wanted to unwind. They had no idea that they were in that Lakeside Park and that they were sitting inside the Neil Peart Memorial Pavilion. Wife's aunt, not being a big Jethro Tull fan, had no idea who they were, but had the presence of mind to get a paper plate autographed. One of the world's greatest prog rock bands, picnicking in the eponymous park from another of the world's greatest prog rock band's biggest hits, inside the pavilion erected to the song's writer, and all she wanted was a little water for the dog. She said that they were the nicest people, and their personal chef sent her home with grilled steak and salmon for the pups. Like and subscribe for more edit videos.